carpet of cats over my shoulder, and one of the main cats of this group grooming and cleaning herself. They're all very, very full bellied. They've been eating a buffalo. And welcome to our wild part of this earth, our patch of Djuma Game Reserve here in the Kruger National Park. My name is Mark. Brian is on camera with me this afternoon, and Tara is back in final control. We're heading out on our 3 p.m. Afternoon live safari. We're coming to you live from Africa, and we're sitting with a pride of lion that we found this morning, and we're going to try and see what they're going to be up to for the rest of the afternoon, maybe having to come back here intermittently. Welcome from wherever you are. You're obviously all over the planet. Some of you afternoon, some of you morning, some of you still evening. I think it's about 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time at the moment. We're in a beautiful late summer's day. We went into autumn for a little while, and we've suddenly sprung back into a little bit of summer, which is quite amazing. Temperatures around 29, 30 degrees Celsius. I think it's about 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Brian's age and my age.
Fair, not quite.
But a difference to what we saw this morning is that we have got the whole pride here now. This morning we saw 6 cats, if I remember correctly. I stand to be corrected. You're welcome to write into us, and I'll give you the addresses shortly. But I only saw 6 of the cats this morning, and I was getting a little bit confused until one of the viewers pointed out to me that one of the young females had a little bit of a lump on her elbow. I've got a lump on my elbow. I'll show it to you one of these days. Sun's coming out, Brian. I don't know if maybe because she's going to either get hot or she might just decide to move. But we just had this sudden patch of sun coming through the cloud, and well, I call it lion light when the sun gets low and there's certain colors out. So this afternoon we've arrived back with the pride, and all 8 of them are here. This is the Nkuhuma pride. She's going to go and flop on top of one of the others. As soon as the sun came out, I thought that she might get active. Well, it's good to see your kidneys are working very well. There's better water at the dam. This goes to show how lion are not really fussy about the water that they drink. This is just a little muddy puddle. Recently filled only from a few nights ago from the rain, but it's still pretty muddy. But their water requirements, and I suppose their constitution is strong enough to be able to handle this kind of a thing, especially when you consider the state of the carcasses that they eat sometimes. We're going to go a little bit closer. In fact, I think what we'd like to do is maybe go around the other side of them, because I don't really want to sit in front of the water. And she lay down next to that cub and actually lay on its paw, and it actually got a little bit cross. Although being a youngster, she didn't really care very much. They're full of buffalo. They've had a buffalo. There's not really much going to happen with these cats in the immediate future. But for now, I'm going to drive around to the other side so that we can get some better light on them, perhaps, and also get a better view of the whole twin dams. We're at twin dams here at Djuma Game Reserve in the Greater Kruger National Park. And this is not a captive pride of lion. This is a wild pride. They are part of several hundred wild prides of lion that live in the Greater Kruger National Park, millions and millions of acres. That is probably one of the biggest national parks in the world. One in Canada. So it's a little bit of a case of semantics, since we as humans can call things national parks and game reserves, but ultimately they're areas set aside for wildlife, and there are a couple of game reserves or wildlife areas that are not national parks that may perhaps be bigger, so it's a little deceiving on that score. So here we have the pride, very far south for their normal range, for their normal, I don't know, call anything normal. This is nature. Nothing's really normal. But yes, perhaps a little bit far south for their territory. They would maybe include this as their home range. What Brian is showing you now, the one that's sleeping on the right of your screen, that's the young male of the pride. We can just see his mane starting to grow, and perhaps he'll lift his head for us in a little while. You might be asking how it can be that we're sitting here in an open vehicle and we're approaching these lion like this, and it's really only wild lion that you can do this with. Captive bred lion would be on us in a shot. We won't go into that in too much detail, but being out in the wild and being a very unique area of a very wild area of Africa, there are very strict rules about how people behave, and generation after generation of animals that live here get to learn that we are not really part of their lives, that they still have to get on with their lives no matter what happens to them. Nature has to take its course, and all we can do in the vehicles is watch from the sidelines, bystanders, voyeurs, whatever you want to call it, be a part of their lives. And it has come to the point where, quite miraculously, we don't impact on their lives in such a way that we're able to witness what lion do. And we could sit here for 3 hours now and watch them sleep. But no matter what happens, nothing that we do really will influence their behavior. So we get to be able to watch lion doing what lion do. Now it is quite a warm afternoon. The sun has come out again. Lots of little blue sky patches. I don't believe they're going to go anywhere in the immediate future. But I do believe that there will be other vehicles who would like to come and see them. And so we're going to really enjoy their company, the peace and quiet of their company for a while. And when the game lodges and the safari guides come out with their guests to view them, we'll go off and maybe look for some other things. And then I'd like to come back here a little bit later, because when it starts cooling down, they're going to have digested a lot of this buffalo that you can see has filled their bellies. They might go and drink, or they might decide to take a walk. They might go down into the riverbed. There are a lot of mites and there are a lot of possibilities, and I would like to be here a little bit later, if we can, to see what one of those possibilities really turns out to be. There's no predicting what they will do. It's funny, I was saying to Brian when we were arriving that I wasn't really sure where they had got to, and all I saw was this big belly sticking out of the grass at the big jackalberry tree. And I said, well, never mind that, I can see the belly. So they have gorged themselves. Interestingly enough, there was a hyena that was seen this morning just after we saw them. Just after they came to drink here at Twin Dams, there was a hyena that came out of the bushes. I'm not too sure which side of the main road called Gowrie Main, but it came onto Gowrie Main, running towards the west with a buffalo leg in its mouth. And that was no doubt part of, or the rest of, or the last of the buffalo that they had killed. To my knowledge, none of the guides managed to find the carcass, and there certainly hasn't been any vulture activity that would be normally associated with a buffalo kill, but it's quite possible that because of the rain and because of the weather that we've been having, vultures haven't been flying. It's been very cool weather. It's very difficult for vultures to fly in the overcast conditions because they need the warm air thermals, these warm currents that keep them aloft, that require very, very little energy to stay aloft. And when it's cloudy, they have to flap their wings a lot, and of course, well, that takes a lot of energy. So I think they might have had a secret buffalo kill somewhere, these cats, that none of us knew about for the last 2 days. It could even be that they caught it in the rain, or just after the rain when it was muddy and it was slippery. But a very interesting question that has come in from Joyce, and Joyce is in Pennsylvania. Joyce, nice to hear from you, and Joyce is very well versed in the different lion prides that occur in this area. Joyce has been part of the drives for a long time. Wants to know what would happen if they were to meet up with the Tsalala breakaway pride, which evidently are quite close. I don't know how close they are, Joyce. I don't think they're too close, but I might not have the same information that you do. And very often, actually, some of our viewers have better information than I do, and I live here. And it's wonderful that we're able to share things in real time in that regard. What would happen would be probably quite a fight, Joyce. I don't know if the Tsalalas have ever met up with the Nkuhumas. Their territories or their home ranges, I suppose, just marginally overlap, with this being the southern and close to, no, by no means the western, but certainly the southernmost limit of the Nkuhuma pride. And funny enough, I heard that they were fighting with the Styx pride that are just south of us. But I might be wrong. Maybe it was the Tsalala breakaways that they were fighting with. So that's something that I would like to get information on as well. But I would imagine that there would be a fight. I would also think that the only lion that they might come into contact with in this part of the world would really be the Styx, because there has been this overlapping for many, many years with the Styx and the Nkuhumas, and I think the Styx and the Nkuhumas have actually been seen being quite amicable together. And I think that they're actually part of the same pride, just different splinter groups, different female splinter groups, because instead of having a very big pride that requires a lot of meat that they can spread themselves out over a territory, especially being that the Matimba males are both covering these females and they're covering the Styx. Kind of just a guess of mine. But I don't think that the Tsalala breakaway pride are any part of this, and I think that there would probably be some fur flying if they were to meet up. I see this little boy, he's a teenager, he's got his beard growing. I think my beard looked like that when I was in the army. Oh, they heard something. Look how quickly they... What it is we're close to Gari Main, and there's a truck. I actually felt, did you feel it? I felt the vibration of that deep diesel engine before I heard it. And so did they. Must be a delivery truck or something on Gari Main. and clearly they are quite aware of the sound and the size of that. Gosh, look at this little one. She's so full. Tiger cats, I'll make sure no trucks come and get you. I'll drive my Land Rover in front of any truck that came anywhere near you. I'd do a sort of a Greenpeace thing, or a Tiananmen Square thing. Lay myself down in front of a tank. Well, that got their attention. Shows that while they might be asleep, you know, cats have this unnerving tendency to block out all ambient sound, but be alert and be aware of that one tiny little sound that makes it's like mom when you're a kid. There can be so much noise in the house, but when you do something wrong, mom can be in the other room and she can hear you, and she'll say, "Mark, what are you doing?" "Nothing, Mom." Not nothing, I could hear. Cats are like that with noise. Oh, yeah. Interesting, that. Very interesting. Might be Mom, I don't know. Or sibling. But they squeezed into this little patch of shade that's obviously comfortable. They're a pride, so close proximity is important, and body touch and body contact, but only to a point. Quite obviously he rolled over and he maybe rolled onto her paw or something. What do lions do? Sandy in Missouri wants to know, what do lions do to avoid being completely eaten alive by fleas? Or I guess, Sandy, you're extending that to other pesky parasites. I can see there are a bunch of flies on them now. They're actually, I should show you pictures in the insect book. So there are bat flies and incredible flies, blood-sucking flies, that don't even have wings anymore, and they look like something that comes out of a Dune novel. She's looking at me. I'm sorry, am I talking too loud? Okay, I'll keep it down a little bit. I'll lean closer to the mic. They are a host of parasites that do invade them and do keep them active. But I don't know if there is anything that they eat in particular. Certainly in terms of internal parasites, I know that one of the reasons why dogs and cats, you always see dogs and cats eating grass, and it's often a particular type of grass that has quite rough hairs on it, and before they swallow it, they actually mull it into a ball in their mouth, and then they swallow it, and actually what it does is it almost brushes the digestive tract and does rid their intern their a lot, a number of things. They roll around a little bit. I think that's the sort of the most basic of hygiene, rolling in the dust when they can, or in the sand. The grooming that they do, they groom themselves, which reaches pretty much most of their body. When they're grooming themselves, they've got a very, very rough tongue, so invariably they are to some extent ridding themselves of things. They've got very, very neat little incisors, and I don't know if any of you have ever had a dog or a cat doing the incisor bite, to get those little nits and ticks and things that might be too small to get caught by the tongue. They have claws, they scratched, but they're also social enough that they groom each other, and that kind of grooming, which we call allo grooming, helps get to areas that they can't get to themselves. So clearly the very fact that they are as healthy as they're looking tells us that the kind of measures that they take, the self-grooming, the allo grooming, the rolling, the rain that might happen, the scratching, the effort that they make at the moment is sufficient to keep the parasite load down and keep their condition pretty healthy. It becomes very evident, and things might change, but if we go into a drought, or if conditions get very, very dry and game becomes scarce. Drought normally means that maybe animals will be dying, and it allows predators to feed a lot better, but sometimes a drought can hurt the predators too. But yes, we're in a time of the year when this is a very healthy pride lion. Very interesting thing in that when a lioness is pregnant, and I need to verify this, but I've learnt this over the years from others, and I believe it to be true, that when a lioness is pregnant, there are, I don't know what it is in her blood, but her blood salts or her blood iron levels, something changes in their blood that makes them distasteful to ticks and some of the other blood-sucking parasites, because they can't really afford to be weakened by parasites. Got a great question from Johannesburg, from Colin. Great to hear from some of our local South Africans. Or actually, sorry, Colin, I'm just assuming, but you're here in South Africa, so I'm considering you a South African for today. Colin wants to know if an antelope or a buffalo were to walk in here, would they ignore it, or would they hunt, would they attack it? Yes, Colin, both. Answer to both questions. Yes, they would attack, and yes, they would ignore. And I would only know when it happens, because I don't know. I can only think that because they're so fat, that they would probably weigh up their options, and if it was possibly possibly an easy target, maybe. But I think that they would most likely just lie there and look at it and ignore it. Having said that, I have seen lion that are on a kill get up and go and kill a buffalo because it was there. So there is really any possibility. That's one of the reasons why we sit with lion a lot with or leopards, because we know that at any moment they can whip up from being fast asleep and bellies to the wind and go straight into attentive mode in the blink of an eye. And sometimes we just sit and we hope and wait for that moment to happen. Well, just so that we can see the behavior. Not that we're hoping for them to make a kill, but it just goes to show that nothing out here is predictable. Nothing. It's all a wait and see game. Got a question from B in Lee Mountain. Did you get where that is in? I don't know, I've never heard of Lee Mountain. But I guess in the US. He wants to know if lions snore, if we can hear any of them snore. I can hear them breathing heavily. I don't believe I've heard I've heard them snore. And the heavy breathing is because the bellies are so full, and there must be just so much pressure on on the diaphragm. But also the heavy breathing, I suppose, I know I've done it too. It helps with the discomfort of an overfull stomach. Interesting. I mean, we just had a pair of starlings fly over them. The starlings aren't shouting the way they normally would. I've seen lions sleeping on their back with an entire herd of impalas, zebra, wildebeest, giraffe walking past them and paying them very little attention. In fact, not even alarming, because the cats were so full, and even when the cats sat up and looked at the animals, they didn't really alarm, because it's almost as if they knew that with that belly, you're not going very far. This is a Birchall's glossy starling that Brian is showing you now. Are you picking up any sound of breathing? No. We might be sitting a bit too far to hear it. And a very, very thoughtful question coming in from Charlie. And that Charlie sent this in through Twitter, and understand that cheetah have evolved or adapted to diurnal hunting to avoid rather likes of lion and competition, because I suppose Charlie means that the others are. There's a big sigh from the little boy. To avoid the nocturnal predators. It's a little bit of that, Charlie. There certainly is a little bit of that, and it's not so much an evolutionary thing as in terms of avoiding other predators, but in terms of lessening the competition amongst the predators, because they're all hunting the same prey species. So there isn't really one reason. There are a whole bunch of reasons. So yes, that would be one of them, most definitely, that it is far better to hunt during the day, because you have the least likelihood of having your prey taken by your, perhaps, the few main competitors being lion, leopard, hyena, well, no, we're not talking about wild dog yet, lion, leopard, and hyena, even jackal for that matter. I've seen jackal chase cheetah off of a kill. But it's not entirely true, because there are other factors. I've seen vultures chasing cheetah off of a kill, and that's many, many times when they just get overwhelmed by the number of vultures. And that has always had to have played a role in their diurnal hunting, especially since they're hunting out in the open and they are so visible to vultures when they're hunting. So essentially that is part of it. The other part of it is that, well, leopard hunt in relatively thick bush, and they have a very, very short hunting range. They stalk their prey and they pounce. They don't really chase after their prey very much. Lion are kind of an intermediate, and especially since they are cooperative hunters, they hunt in groups. They hunt a little bit in the open and a little bit in the bush, but they're also hunting cooperatively, have a completely different strategy. In fact, they have multiple strategies, being a group hunter for different terrain, different prey, different conditions, but they'll hunt pretty much anywhere. But once again, they don't chase their prey down. They have to get close enough to strike, and they have to perform their hunting strategy seamlessly to be able to achieve the kill. And so cheetah, I think, to some extent also exploited the fact that nobody was out there during the day on the open plains chasing animals down with speed. And that's how cheetahs managed to occupy that niche. They developed very long, tall, thin, lithe bodies to be able to run their prey down. And yes, it was more convenient to do so during the day because it's pretty hard to see obstacles running at 50 miles an hour at night. So everything about cheetah, including the fact that there was less competition during the day, but everything about cheetah managed to get them to where they are now. But they also have become such specialist cats that cheetah are finding it hard to adapt, and so cheetah are a declining species. Lion and leopard are both species that have learnt and are capable of adapting. Leopard most of all. But having said that, we have seen leopard. In fact, Karula is famous for it. Karula is our resident leopard here. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, she is what we call the Queen of Djuma because she has always occupied Djuma as her territory. We've been watching Karula for many years now. We've watched her raise many cubs, and she has a habit of hunting in daylight hours. We've seen her hunting in mid-morning, we've seen her hunting around lunchtime even. And there too, taking advantage of the fact that these cats are likely to be less active at that time of the day and less likely to disturb her on a kill. But it doesn't really hold, because if there was a leopard that made a kill down in the riverbed right now, the noise of that, no matter how full these cats are, and no matter how fast asleep that they may seem to be, these cats would take them 3 leaps, they would be down in that riverbed on top of whatever was making a noise, because it's just something that they do. And they certainly don't seem like they've got the energy now, but believe me, they're storing it. Every little ounce of protein that they're digesting right now is just getting stored into energy for those muscles to react. And it can happen at any second. Question from Rhode Island, from Gail. Good afternoon. Well, it's good morning to Gail. Out there, I guess, Eastern Standard. Gail wants to know about the hierarchy, hunting and feeding. I think hierarchy goes out the window to some extent, feeding. But certainly hunting, there is an alpha female. She's normally the oldest female, and she normally dictates the hunt, and it's her ear and tail movements and her eyes and where she's looking, and she will instruct to some degree other members of the pride where to go and what to do going into a hunt. And it has been known that generally it's the alpha female that actually gets to bring the animal down, but that's not always the case, because a hunt can go 1,000 different ways as soon as they initiate it. Feeding hierarchy varies, because when they're on their own like this, without the dominant males, without the males of the territory in their presence, it becomes a free-for-all, and it's how much meat you can get your teeth into and guard or protect with your paws, and it's usually because of the hierarchy, it's usually because of their dominance that they're able to intimidate the subordinates into relinquishing parts of the carcass. But it's a frenzy if they were hungry and they were to kill something. But that in itself varies, and it's very hard to put a label on animal behavior and say this is what happens, because every single pride is different. But not only is every single pride of lion different, every single day in a pride's life is different. And they have moods, and they have varying degrees of, or varying factors that influence how they behave, especially around a carcass. And a lot of that has got to do with their hunger, how long it is since they last ate, whether the males are around, also the moods of the males. Maybe one day a male will chase them all off of a carcass and mantle it and keep it to himself or the males, and another day he might share it with even the smallest of cubs. I've known males that have never kept the cubs at bay, but they've kept the females at bay. So there isn't a generalization that we can do or say about what happens at a carcass, because you've got to get to learn the individuals of each member of the pride and their behavior and their temperament and their characters, because they are individuals. They are individual. I call them children, but they are own. Just had a go-away bird arrive. There's a little bit of movement. They are rolling and yawning. I don't know if that means that they're going to start getting up, but it seems we need to move on. And this is the Nkuhuma pride. They are down here at Twin Dams. We will come back here later, but for now we're going to move on and see what else we can find for you this afternoon. All stations, Nkuhuma and Gala, still Lalapanzi at Twin Dams. I'm leaving them open lock. What's she gonna do? Turn around and go back to sleep? Or move down onto the sand? The shadows are getting longer and the sand is cooler and probably softer. They are going to be getting more alert as the afternoon wears on and the temperature cools. I want to head a little bit west, almost to the border of Arathusa. A couple of reasons, mostly because I heard of a herd of elephants that might have been moving in that area earlier today. I want to see if we can maybe find some sign of them. We haven't seen some ellies for a while. I'd certainly need an elephant fix. I don't know about you guys, but it'd be nice to find an elephant. But first, I want to visit a reptile, if it's there. So I want to go back towards Gari Dam. We're going to take a big loop. I'm going to go back towards Gari Dam. I haven't heard from any of the zoomies. But by the way, we do have live cameras here on the area that we cover, in the area that we cover. One at Djuma Waterhole. We also have another camera at Arathusa Waterhole. And I do encourage any of you who are what we call zoomies, any of you who are the people that are operating the camera, if there is anything at the water, to let us know, because we can then follow it once it leaves the dam. Once it leaves that camera, we can actually take this camera and we can follow it perhaps. But there's something I'd like to look at. Close to, well, on our way doing this detour, we're going to be going north to Gari Dam, and we're going to end west and then come back south again, maybe around Treehouse Dam or something. But I want to, it's there.
Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted and get you back in the vehicle with us.
Sorry about that. I guess we've got a new little patch. There's a little patch now on Twin Dams Road we need to start avoiding, because I guess, well, not avoiding, but anticipating. I didn't put around Mumba Road Junction, that little patch where the Mumba Road goes down into the Mawati River. So now we know where it is. We can preempt it next time. But sorry about that. We lost you for a minute. Don't go anywhere. If we get these little signal breaks, ooh, I see a striped animal and a big buffalo. If we lose you, or if you lose us, it's just a temporary signal glitch. After all, we are driving a TV studio around in an open vehicle in the middle of Africa, and venture forward slowly. I don't want this buffalo to get up. I don't want to disturb him. There are all sorts of little mud wallows that have become wet since this little rain that we had, and so the buffalo are not as concentrated at the dams as they usually are. They're now finding anywhere to just lie around and chew the cud. Afternoon, Squire, and his red bulldog specker. I'm more interested in these two who might be going somewhere. He's not going anywhere, but these two might go somewhere. So I just want to say hello to these two. Hello, children. Stallion and a mare. Interesting. This is the stallion. I wonder if they can sense that their cat's down there. It's quite far. They're certainly both watching something. Unless it's just the buffalo. Could be they're just watching the buffalo. Well, in the UK, hello Will. How do I tell the difference between the genders? Well, sometimes you just have to look at the animal, and you kind of get a feel, just the aura, everything about him. He's got a stronger jawline, got a thicker neck. I do have to admit, I have seen his genitals, so that does make a difference in telling. But generally a stallion has a much heavier body, thicker neck, stronger jaw, heavier shoulders. This other zebra, however, is just coming out of a really, really bad wound, and perhaps it's something that I would I ordinarily wouldn't point out, but I have to point it out to you at the moment. And also, just got to look at the size of his haunches, just look at the size of his thighs compared to hers. But there is rather an intensive gash in her side that clearly she was favoring the other leg, but that's probably because she's been doing that for quite some time. He's a young. See, now I'm suddenly stumped. But anyways, that was obviously quite a scar. I'm just looking at it with my binoculars now. That was quite a gash, probably from a lion attack. And we've seen zebra with little gashes and things, and we often get very concerned, what are we going to do? And there's nothing really that we can do that won't put the animal in more danger than to let nature take its course. And here's a perfect example of how this zebra has survived fantastically well after having had quite a severe gash in her rump. And, well, none the worse for wear. Nancy in Wisconsin wants to know if the oxpeckers would help healing the gash or if they would hinder it. They could actually become quite a nuisance, Nancy, because they would lap at the blood. They would also feed on maggots that might be in the wound, and maggots would be good for a zebra because they would be feeding on all the necrotic tissue, any of the dead tissue that might exist. And zebra could be susceptible to things like septicemia if a wound became really badly septic. Septicemia is one thing that could kill them. But oxpeckers are known to keep wounds open, to keep the blood, to keep the wound attracting flies, so they can be a hindrance. And there's always been this idea that oxpeckers are it's a sort of a mutualism or a symbiotic relationship or something, but they can be quite a pest. But obviously not so much so that they're no longer. Oh, he was doing the phlegm. I need to move forward so I can see him again, because there we go, you can see him. Hello, children. Just don't go south, okay? Because they might not be hungry, but their cat's there. You don't want more scratches on your rumps. Dee in Missouri wants to know what grasses they're eating. Dee, I can't tell. They've got their heads in the grass. I can't really tell what it is that they're eating. They could be eating some of the panicum that's here. There is a Digitaria grass that's growing. There's an Eragrostis that's growing. There's even a, what is that grass that's just next to me here? I'm trying to think of I'll think of the name. But they only eat grass, but they do eat a variety of grasses, and they're kind of not quite a bulk grazer. They're not a fussy grazer. They eat a lot of different grasses, and they eat a lot of it. They go more for quantity rather than quality. I'm just looking at some of her scars on this flank, and I'm starting to think that might not be lion, that's maybe zebra that's given her a beating, because I'm seeing some very distinct hoof marks on her rump, very close to a matching scar. The matching scar on this side, that might be from lion. I don't know, that's kind of very, very funny. That maybe there was a lion holding on both sides, but those big round marks, especially the one, and that is a zebra hoof if ever I saw one. Kind of branded into her thigh there. And then the one towards the rump. Interesting. I can only speculate. Interesting question from Tanya in the Netherlands, something I've never heard before. Tanya was saying on her last safari, she was told that in hotter climates, zebra have more stripes. I can't comment on that, Tanya. It never occurred to me to think about it. And the different species of zebra have different stripes that are not necessarily temperature related. I would have to look into that, to be honest. I've never heard that theory, but I would love to look into it to see if there is anything in it. Certainly, one thing I can tell you is that we're looking at the southern population of the plain zebra, and if you look, especially since she's got her rump to us, in between the big black stripes on her rump, you can see there are those sort of brownish stripes. We call those shadow stripes. And it's those shadow stripes that are characteristic of the southern race of the Burchell zebra up in Kenya and Tanzania. If you ever see a photograph of a zebra and they have the shadow stripes, you know it's from southern Africa. And if you see a photograph of a zebra without the shadow stripes, just with black and white, without that very faint sort of, sometimes it can even be reddish and russet colored, then you know those are East African plain zebra, just a different subspecies. But I think if we had to see a herd of zebra, we would see anything from broad stripes to thin stripes, because they even look like our fingerprints. So you must know that every zebra has its stripes. I think we'll call this one Spot. What do you think? Because we've got those two spots on his rump from a zebra hoof.
Definitely.
Just in case we see her again. Okay, Spot, we're going to be leaving you now. I haven't seen these before, I don't think, this particular couple. Hello, Dylan. Dylan's in Iowa wanting to know about that spot on the inner front leg. It's known in horse circles as the chestnut, and I'm learning more about it as we go along, because I'm not too much, as much as I love the horsey sect, and I have a lot of friends in the horse business. Known as the chestnut, that spot. It is thought of as perhaps a vestigial toe. I guess in a way, maybe. I mean, it is just above the wrist, so I guess it's possible. But it's not a scent gland. As far as I know, it's not a scent gland. Have a look at a search engine and see what you can find out about the chestnut on the inside of the front leg of a horse or a zebra or any equid. Right, we're going to move along, and we're going to leave these wonderfully striped, iconic creatures be. Bye-bye, children. Yes, Mr. Stallion, you. Put your ears back. Give me that look. You see that look he gave me? He kind of put his ears back. Whatever, Mr. Zebra, whatever. We'll see you later, dude. Don't go south, as I said. A few cats there that might be interested. Chris is sending a tweet. Chris wants to know what the meaning is of the twitching of the legs. Is it to get rid of flies? I think mostly it is, Chris. I notice it with horses, and you always get it with horses. There's always this muscle twitching that goes on. And I guess it is because there are flies that are biting them or irritating them, or oxpeckers that are irritating them. Now there's a wallow up ahead. I'm wondering if there was enough mud to fill, or rather water to make mud, to get a buffalo to come and wallow. Because this one dried up pretty quickly, and we're lucky that a lot of them have become wet again, and a lot of them are being occupied by buffalo at the moment. Yes, no, yes, no. It's quite close to the road, so I don't want to disturb anyone if they're here. No. Oh, there is one, but he's not wallowing. He's been wallowing. Gosh, look at him, he's full of mud. Well, somebody asked me earlier, what do lion do about the flies? This is what buffalo do. He's been... Hopefully he'll move into the sun and we'll get to see not only the mud on his body, but maybe, gosh, he's caked, even his horns. But he's also got a swarm of flies buzzing around him. And that lovely mud pack that he carries must be some relief from them all. But he's not able to groom himself like a cat. So he cakes himself in mud, and then he'll go off and rub against a tree, and once the mud dries and he rubs it off against the tree, he takes off a lot of the parasites that might be biting him and affecting his health or his mood. Lennon, Michigan is asking about buffalo and TB, and we know that the lion gets it's bovine tuberculosis, by the way, that we're talking about, TB, bovine TB. And the question is, how do buffalo get it? I think it's just inherent in their population. It's just something that they carry, like foot and mouth or hoof and mouth disease. They're just corridors disease. There are just certain diseases that live within the population, but over time there's been a... Oh, no, wait, hang on a second. I think it's probably from domestic cattle, if I'm not mistaken. But they might have contracted it. I haven't heard anybody going to MPC Kaya this afternoon. Copy, thanks. That is one big bull buffalo.
Looks like it needs business.
I was just thinking the same thing. It's not something you want to meet on foot. And that's because they can be quite irascible, they can be quite bad-tempered. Bruce is calling from New York. Bruce is asking if we were on a walking safari and we came across this buffalo, would his instinct be to charge us? Or, well, I think to start with that, Bruce, no, I don't believe the instinct is to charge. And my experience, especially living at home with buffalo, I have buffalo that live around my house, and I very often walk outside my door. I don't know that they're around, and I don't bump into them, but I see them from about this distance, or sometimes. Sorry, listening to the radio quickly. Ah. Interesting. We need to go and see that. Herd of buffalo that seem to be coming this way. Be nice to see if there is a nice big herd coming in. We haven't seen them for a long time. Most of the time, if they're not being threatened, and this is sort of, it goes for a lot of animals in nature, if they're not threatened, if they have enough space to react, if their personal space and their comfort zone isn't invaded, they'd much rather turn around and move away from you. And quite often they actually just stand there and they watch me, and I go about my business and they carry on feeding, because I acknowledge them, they acknowledge me. There's no need for me to get closer. There's no need for them to be worried, because I'm not really out there to do anything. Buffalo have got a reputation because they're very cunning and they're very clever. And when it comes, and a lot of their reputation comes from people who have hunted them, and it's only natural that animals who are being hunted are going to behave in a very different way. So generally speaking, if one were to arrive here on foot and came through and we didn't know that he was here, and my guess is mostly he would probably lift his head, he would have a look, and he'd turn around in a huff and he'd run away. Or just walk away. It's very hard to predict what he will do. But unless he's been aggressed and unless he's been seriously hassled by humans, he's not likely to just attack for no reason. Especially here where the buffalo are not hunted. They do have a reputation, but they're not always aggressive, and they're not always going to be out there to kill you. But the point is, don't approach them. The point is, when you see an animal, there's no need to get any closer when you're on foot, because just that very act, no matter how far you are, is a threatening act, and you're likely to invoke the attacker's best form of defense clause. Fight or flight, you know, that kind of thing. You don't want to question the fight or flight response or the distance that response is triggered. When you see something and you're out on foot, where you are, you gauge the wind, you gauge what the animal's mood is, and generally you don't need to get closer. You can walk parallel with it, you can keep your distance and observe it. The best thing to do is when you see something, that's as close as you need to be to observe it without inducing any behavior that no longer becomes natural behavior. It then becomes behavior based on its reaction to a human, a dangerous human in its space. Fortunately, buffalo don't see us and the vehicles in the same light. And thank you, Mr. Buffalo. I'm sorry to push you away from your shade and your mud. You can come back now. Or he might be wanting to go out there in the sun, rub on bushes, rub some of the mud off. Lynn wants to know what the dominant sense of buffalo is. How's their eyesight? Very good sense of smell. I reckon buffalo's eyesight is very good. I think what maybe throws us off as humans is that sometimes animals' eyesight might be very good, but they're not really concerned with what is out there. They're mostly concerned with what is in their immediate, so we seem to think of them as being short-sighted. Meanwhile, they're actually just less concerned about what is far away. Just seen one buffalo track crossing the road here. There's reports of a herd of buffalo that have been coming down Philemon's cut line in an easterly direction. Hearing is pretty good too. Buffalo are very sensitive. I'm also hearing a lot of alarm calls again. When you stop, you can hear this. I can hear crombics. I can hear chinspot batters. Somewhere in here. And it could be something as small as a slender mongoose. So those are the crombics that you're, I think, focusing on now in that buffalo thorn. see if we can find. You can hear all this twittering, this chattering that several bird species are making. And it's clearly something that is attacking birds or attacking a nest or something. Ephraim, come in. Yeah, what Mkonzo is that? Okay, copy, thanks. I think I'm going to just have to take a look. Poke our nose into that since it is fairly open. Far too much happening without. Still mostly it's back there. I'm pointing away from it. It's quite hard for me to gauge direction because I've only got one ear open to everything. I thought I was hearing noises here and I wasn't. And there's quite an extensive herd because I'm seeing buffalo as much as maybe 200 odd yards up ahead. But I want to go a little bit further. This could be a very big herd of buffalo. I'm seeing a number of female buffalo and no doubt a lot of calves. Long time since we've actually seen a herd of buffalo come through this part of Djuma. It's really great to actually experience this because they are vital to the ongoing success of the grassland here at Djuma by trampling the old dry grasses. And yes, I know how you feel, buffalo. And of course leaving these lovely big lumps of compost manure as they move through, so we can almost count them. There's probably been about 20 that have crossed the road already. There are a lot that are going to come through behind us. And while I'd like to go and see the hyena den, this is a unique opportunity because we're on an open patch like this unique opportunity to be able to see this herd come past us. Just numbers, something we haven't seen for quite some time, and the range of different individuals and characters that we're likely to see, quite remarkable. All crossing over to the north, heading up towards Rebecca's Road. I'd say probably about 50 of them that are crossed by now. A couple of calves coming through now. We'll be able to see some of the very young calves, I hope. Some of them maybe only a few months old, very, very pale. There's a little one. Well, that's maybe another 50. There's a tiny one coming across shortly. Only maybe a week at the most. That little one there in the background, that's tiny little buffalo, smaller than an impala. Of course, there are probably another 20 or 30 that are crossing behind us that we can't see, so it's a fairly good sized herd. I think more or less the end of the herd that's coming out now, with the bulk of it I think is crossed, just judging by the sounds that I'm hearing. Do you want to stay here? Shall we move up a bit?
Yeah, we can move up a bit.
Just to get the last of the herd coming across. The old bull's doing a bit of a dance behind us. But nothing serious. There's always playfulness in youth. I love it. We've had some wonderful times with buffalo herds and calves playing on this very road in the past. And it would please me to no end to identify sense. She's a very wise old buffalo, this. Gracie in Dallas wants to know if these buffalo will trample everything around them like an elephant herd. Not really trample everything, Grace. What they will do is they will open up the grassland a little bit. They will be breaking a lot of the dry grass stems that need to be flattened to allow new grasses to grow. And because the ground is pretty damp and there are new grasses coming up, it couldn't be a better time to actually have a buffalo come through and actually feed on a lot of the new grasses. Prompts a little bit of growth. Plus there is the fact that the ground is damp and there's going to be more growth. But most importantly, as I said earlier, the fact that they leave their dung behind is something that helps to fertilize the soil for the grasses for next season, or for growth of grasses. Really beautiful sight. We could probably go up to Zoe's Road in the old hyena den to see. We'll be able to see them eventually coming up that way. We could follow them up Rebecca's Road. I'm guessing that it's maybe 200, maybe 250 strong. It's not an exceptionally large herd, but it is considerable, a number of buffalo that are coming through, bulls and cows and calves, some very big bulls that tend to bring up the rear. But I'm also tempted to leave them for now, just for the time being, because I do want to do a few things this afternoon. The one thing I do want to do is go back to the lion at some stage. But I believe this herd has just come through, or just come past the hyena den, and that might be quite pertinent. We might be able to go and see how they, well, I don't know how they reacted, but we might be able to see some activity at the den this afternoon. I just want to show you just quickly an interesting cloud front. It's not very big, but you can almost see it's like a, well, it's a front. What more can I say? Rolling in. It's not particularly dark and foreboding. It's very, very thin layer of cloud, but it is showing some serious wind activity at about 15,000-20,000 feet. Station leaving Klumbinyari open lock at the moment. They're heading north up onto Rebecca's Road. Sean, come in.